Thank you. Those are like some big shoes to fill. So. Oh, and Mark is here. Hi. Awesome. So you found out who was crossing. Never mind. Okay, we'll get serious here. I've been asked to get into the 21st century and use the monitor down here so that I don't have to look up at the screen. Because part of the thing is they're videotaping these. I don't know why they're doing that, but they are. These are being videotaped, and when I lean back like this, they only get a little portion of my face, which is probably better than getting all of it. But okay, anyways. I'll make sure you guys are awake. That's all. So you are, okay. Anyway. If I remember right, Jesus, in the Bible, it's recorded that Jesus performed, during his whole entire ministry, 39 miracles are recorded. Now, his ministry lasted 3.5 years. That's not even one a month. Now, we know that he did more miracles than that because, I mean, and there are things like it says, and he healed other people, you know, and stuff like that. But they're not like detailed for us. So, my takeaway from that is that the ones that are included in the Bible are profoundly important. And they speak to us about a whole lot of things. And so, what I want to do today is to look at Jesus at the feast in John chapter 5, and the miracle of healing the man who was lame, and see what kind of takeaways we can get from that. So, are we up for that journey? You can say yes if you are, or not, or something. Or, otherwise, I can sit down if we're not up for it. You know. Okay. After this, I'm supposed to look down here. After this, there was the Feast of the Jews. Old dogs develop more new tricks. What can I say? Okay. And after this, he moved the microphone so he could read things. There was a Feast of the Jews, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. Now, this feast was a Feast of Tabernacles, and I'm telling you that because that's what I believe and what other scholars believe. And when you put together all the different feasts, and some of you that have seen Fred Coulter's Harming the Gospels in Modern English, he puts this together very nicely, and that's where I'm basing this out of, that it's the Feast of Tabernacles. And it either was in 28 AD or 29 AD, but I'm not totally sure which one it was. But those are the dates and how it ran in one of those 2 years. Now there is in Jerusalem, by the sheep gate, a pool, which is called in Hebrew Bethesda, having 5 porches. Now the sheep gate, to get the sense of that, we got to go back to Nehemiah and the time when they rebuilt the temple and the city of Jerusalem. So after the captivity, they go back in the time of Nehemiah, and then Elisha, who was the high priest, he rose up from his brethren, the priests, and built the sheep gate, and they consecrated it and hung the doors. So this is when they rebuilt the wall of Jerusalem, and different people had different portions of it. And so Elisha and the high priest, they did the sheep gate. And so this is Elisha there with all the stones on the breastplate, and they're working on the gate. And this is a map of it, and here's the sheep gate, and it's like up here on the north side of the temple. So that's where the old sheep gate was. And then this is just another image of what it might have looked like. I think it's maybe a little hard to know for sure. Now here's some things about the sheep gate. One is that it was the first gate to be restored, and you go back and read Nehemiah, that's where they started, and Elisha did that. It was built and consecrated by the high priest, Elisha. It's kind of interesting that his name means God restores, and so that's the first gate that was restored to Jerusalem. The sheep gate represents salvation, and Jesus is the Lamb who takes away the sin of the world. So that's pretty cool. That was the first gate to Jerusalem that they rebuilt, was the one that represents salvation. And then the fourth point on this is that Jesus always entered Jerusalem through the sheep gate until his final triumphant entry before the crucifixion. Now, to be honest with you, I don't actually know that that's true. I read it in a book, and so, you read stuff in books and it's supposed to be true. But there is stuff in books that is not true. I've learned this. And I didn't actually have time to read back over all the events of Jesus' life. Every time it talks about he was in Jerusalem, if it says what gate he went through or whatever. But it may not be true. So if one of you, somebody was to undertake that study, could just check that out and just send me an email or something about whether it's true or not. Because I can edit this slide, really. But I'm just being honest with you. But I read that and I said, that sounds really cool. That Jesus entered by the sheep gate every time, But I don't really know. But I just read that somewhere, and it sounded good. Okay, so here's the map of the old city of Jerusalem, and here is the pool of Bethesda, right up in there. All right. Now this is kind of an image, dramatization, whatever you call it, but what it could have looked like. And here's, jump ahead. Here is the pool, right here. This whole kind of complex is the pool of Bethesda. There's the temple wall, there's the Roman fortress. Okay, and this is the pool, and then the gate's like over here somewhere. And you go in, and then you have the pool. Okay, so trying to get you a little bit of the setting for all of this. The name is derived from the Hebrew, and or the Aramaic language is Beth Hesed is the Hebrew word, but it's kind of changed a little bit. Bethesda, meaning the house of mercy, the house of grace, or the house of kindness. Is kind of what it means. And so when Jesus came to this pool, he brought grace and mercy and kindness, didn't he? So, just kind of setting it up for us here. Now, this pool has been a great source of controversy to archaeologists and Christian scholars and stuff. Just like in the book of Daniel, the fiery furnace was for a long time, and the lion's den and all that stuff, people scoffed at that, and they said, well, the Bible's not true because blah, 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 stuff didn't happen. Well, then there was this guy named Arthur Rawlinson, I think that was his first name, in about 1854, doing archaeological excavations in Iraq, and they actually found this great big kiln with this inscription on it that says, this is where the people that displeased the king were placed. And so all of a sudden it's like, okay, maybe the book of Daniel is true after all. So there are a lot of things like that, and people say it's not true. One of the things that people are saying now is that the Bible is not true because they have not archaeologically found any evidence that there was ever a synagogue in Nazareth. Now that's significant because that's where Jesus is supposed to have given his first sermon. It was in the city of Nazareth. He stood up in the synagogue and they handed him the scroll, and he says, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me because he's anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor, and like that, out of Isaiah 61. And they can't find any evidence of that, so that's not the Bible again. Okay, that just means they haven't found it yet. See, that's all that means, So don't let that trick you up, because people have been doing that all along. And they also did that with the Pool of Bethesda, because they had a hard time actually finding where it was, and they thought it was somewhere else for a long time. But it was it says a swimming bath, and kind of like, if you please, Hot Springs, Arkansas, where people used to go because they had the hot springs and stuff, and it was used to treat people who were sick. That's kind of what this was. And just kind of trying to set it up for you. Prior to the archaeological digs, the pool, it was thought to be in a whole different part of Jerusalem, not far from the Pool of Siloam. But then this Conrad Schick, back in the 1800s, found this large tank about 30 meters from St. Anne's Church, which he contended was the Pool of Bethesda, but people didn't necessarily agree with him. But then in 1964, there were more archaeological digs, and they actually found remains of the Byzantine church, Herod's temple of Asclepius, I think that's how you say it, and Serapis, and the pool, the healing pools of an Asclepian, two other large pools and a dam between them, and it was quite a complex. But remember that first picture we had, like those two buildings and stuff? This was like a big complex. And it was discovered that the Byzantine construction was built at the very heart of Hadrian's construction and contained the healing pools. So they thought that they had found it. This is the Church of St. Anne, and this is what the excavation looked like today for, this pool where it was. The pool at Bethesda is a depression fed by natural springs. They just keep that natural springs tucked away somewhere, because we're gonna talk about that some more in a minute. So you want to keep that, somewhere where you can access that. A deep reservoir, nearly 40 feet deep, was built to hold water for the temple and all that kind of stuff. It was a reservoir, besides being a spring, it held the water of the rains, the winter rains. And that's just kind of a depiction of what it could have looked like, And in my mind, I always like, if I can kind of see like what it looked like, that's helpful to me to kind of get the sense of what's going on. And there's the pool today, looking from St. Anne's Church on across. You saw the other view looking this way. Now verse 3. It says, in these pools, lay a great multitude of sick people, blind, lame, paralyzed, waiting for the moving of the water. For an angel went down at a certain time into the pool and stirred up the water. And then whoever stepped in first after the stirring of the water was made well of whatever disease he had. Now it says verse 4 is not in the New International Version. I don't know if anybody here has the New International Version there, but some of the more modern translations omit verse 4. And there's a controversy about that, but it's a very significant controversy. I think it speaks to the meaning of the Feast of Tabernacles. Okay, but anyway, we'll go on. I just like to throw these things out because I'm planting seeds. Although the Vulgate does not include the tradition of the water stirring, or the angelic tradition as it's called, they were present in many of the manuscripts used by the early English translators of the Bible, and so therefore they included them in the translations. But the oldest versions of scriptures that they have didn't have verse 4 in it. Verse 4 was added to try to make sense out of the stirring of the water. So this is really a dorky picture, but that's okay. Because I don't really think angels look quite like that. But this is a depiction of an angel who's going down to stir the water. Okay. I don't think angels actually stir the water at all. But that's just what I've come to believe after kind of doing a little digging around on this myself. Modern textual scholars view these extra details as unreliable and unlikely to have been part of the original text. Many translations do not include the troubling of the water angel tradition. And so they kept the numbering system, they just left some of it out, so you don't have a verse 4. In some translations it goes from 3 to 5. Okay. So, now, a certain man, and I know I raised some questions there that I didn't answer yet. Okay. Now, a certain man had been there, had an infirmity 38 years. Now, I know some people have had infirmities for a long time. This guy had his for 38 years. And when Jesus saw him there, and he knew that he had already been in that condition for a long time, Jesus said to him, "Do you want to be made well?" King James says whole, NIV says well, New King James says well. Well, that seems like a no-brainer, doesn't it? Of course you want to be made well. I pastored a church one time where we had a guy who, when he was in high school, developed muscular dystrophy. And he dropped out of high school because he knew that he would never need a job, never be able to work, got on his disability and was living his life, you know. And there were some people in our church who got this kind of weird brainiac idea that God could heal him. And so they went to his house and started praying for him that God would heal him, because they believed that God could do that. I believe God can do that. I think everybody here, I hope you believe that God can do that. That means you have a picture. Anyway, he called me up on the phone. He says he wants to get together and talk. So I go over and I talk with the guy. And he tells me that he wants the people to stop coming and praying for him to be healed, because he did not want to be healed. So I say it's like a no-brainer, but it's not a no-brainer, because this guy, I mean, he was stone cold serious. He said, because I dropped out of high school, I'm not educated, I don't know how to get a job, I don't know what I do, and if God healed me, I'd have all these problems, and my life would be seriously complicated and stuff and whatever. And I'm sitting there thinking in my mind, dude, if God healed you, he could fix all that too. But he didn't have faith for that. There's something about, you know, if you don't believe it, it's not going to happen, you know. And see, he didn't believe that the God who could heal him of his muscular dystrophy could get him a job or make sure he had income or whatever it was. And he didn't believe that, and he wanted people to stop praying for him so that he could continue to live his life just like he had been. A couple of years later, I did his funeral. It did not need to be. So when you think it's a no-brainer, do you want to be made well? I know from personal experience that is not a no-brainer. I know there are people who do not want to be made well, because they have been living their lives a certain way for so long that changing up that life can be awful scary. So here's Jesus and the man. Do you want to be made well? And the guy doesn't say, oh man, do I want to be made well? I'm like, seriously, I want to be made well. That's why I come here every day for the last 38 years. And I can't walk, so somebody has to bring me here and drop me off, or I have to like drag myself here with my mat every morning from wherever it is that I sleep. And I show up here, and I've been doing this every day for who knows how many years, and you're asking me if I want to be made well? And the guy gives Jesus an excuse. Oh, so the guy said to Jesus, he said, sir, I don't have anybody to put me into the pool when the water is stirred. But when I'm coming, somebody else gets down there in front of me. See, that's not really what Jesus is asking is, you know, do you have somebody to help you get in the pool, you know. But do you want to be made well? And a lot of times there are opportunities for us to be made well, and we don't take them because we've got a lot of excuses. You know, and when I say this, I am challenging people, but I'm not meaning to do it in an offensive way. That makes sense. Okay, because I can talk about myself. I can say I need to be made well. See, if I say I don't need to be made well, then that means that I got all my stuff totally together, and I don't need nothing. And if I said that, I'd be lying to you. Because if I said that, I would be God. That would be a lie. Because like Karl Barth said, God is God and I'm not. So I still need fixing. Okay? And so do you. We're just saying. Because we're all working the process until that time when Jesus calls us, you know, and we're changed to immortality and all that stuff. Okay, then we can say we're all together and we've done been made well. But until that day, we all need to live well. Okay, I'm not trying to insult anybody, I'm just trying to deal with what's real. For any of you who've done mission trips and dealt with some of the severe poverty in the world, you find that the most needy people never really get the help. See, there are people who were not as sick as this man, and they could get to the water quicker, couldn't they? Or they maybe had people to help them get in the water because the guy said he didn't have anybody. So they maybe had family members who wouldn't just drop him off there, but they'd actually have the resources to be able to stay there with him all day. And so when the water starts to stir, then he'd go down in the water and somebody get healed. So the most needy people are the ones who never really get help. And that's what they found about orphans. There's the Global Orphan Project out of Kansas City. It's one of the things that they say is that the most needy people in the world can't even get to the resource center to get the help. And we got in America first come, first serve. If you can get in line first before the other people that are slower, you're going to get yours and stuff. And that's something to do with why Jesus said the first are last and the last are first, because he knows something about the people that are at the end of the line. That they just cannot get to the front of the line. And it's always the same people that seem to get to the front of the line. But Jesus is going to take care of the people who are last. Thank God for that, because a lot of times we overlook the people who are last. Because we live in America, the land of opportunity. If you can't get there first, what's wrong with you? A lot of things. There is an organization that our church was involved with for a bunch of years called the Christian Community Development Association, it's CCDA. And you probably have heard the saying, if you give a person a fish, they'll eat today, but if you teach him to fish, they'll eat forever, right? Okay, but what if you don't have no fishing pole? You can teach him to fish, but if you don't have no fishing pole. And he can't get to the pond because he doesn't have transportation. And when he gets out there, some wildlife game warden person is going to come up to him and say, where's your fishing license? And you don't have one, so you can't fish. So teaching a person to fish is only part of the deal. They got to be able to get to the pond, they got to have the tools they need to fish, and they got to have all the legal requirements to be able to do so. So let me tell you about our community. Columbia used to have one of the highest populations. We have like 100,000 people live in our community, about 30,000 of them are college students. It's kind of like Iowa City, the University of Missouri down there. At one time, we had one of the highest percentage populations of homeless people in the country. And we still have a whole lot of them. They live out behind the Walmart down there in the woods, in tents. So we have a lot of people who need jobs. So just on the north side, the northeast side of town, there's a 3M and an Oscar Mayer and a Square D. It's not Square D anymore, they sell them to somebody. But anyway, there's some small manufacturing companies on the northeast side of town. Okay, so their shift started at like 6 o'clock in the morning. The people who really need the jobs don't have transportation, so they got to take the bus. Buses do not run at 6 o'clock to get them there to time for work. So you got to get the city on board with providing transportation so these people can actually get out there. Well, it's outside the city limits. And if the city gets them there at 6 o'clock in the morning, they drop them off and they got to walk the rest of the way because it's outside the city limits. So finding solutions to problems is not just a matter of teaching somebody to fish, but it's getting them to the pond and getting them certified with whatever legal things they have to be able to do the job. Dealing with poverty in America is a little more complex, but not too more complex than this, because this guy didn't have anybody to help him get actually down to the pond, did he? He got close to it, but he couldn't actually get in because he didn't have anybody to help him do that. Well, Jesus says to him, rise, take up your bed and walk. And immediately the man was made well, took up his bed and walked. That's amazing. 38 years he'd been that way. Then Jesus comes by and just says, take up your bed and walk. And he got up and he walked. And I would like to explain to people that this is really a dual miracle, okay? Because the fact that Jesus healed his legs and put strength in his muscles and all of that, that's part of it. But the other part of it is that if you haven't walked in 38 years, and maybe he was 38 years old and never walked, you don't actually, in your brain, know how to walk, even if your legs are strong enough to walk. Okay? Babies, when they're learning to walk, they fall down all the time, don't they? Because they're learning how to balance themselves, and they're learning how the brain can tell your leg to move, and it actually moves. And then the other one moves, and they learn how to do that. So every miracle that Jesus ever did, when he healed somebody who was blind or lame or whatever, he healed the body, but he also did something in their minds. So that they knew how to control their body. They knew what they were seeing. They knew how to speak and form words, and their vocal cords could do all that. So every miracle is like a dual miracle. There's the physical part, but there's the mental part for this guy. Just trying to expand your mind. You probably don't do that. But Jesus was this man's only hope. Can you imagine going somewhere? I can't even imagine this. Going somewhere every day for 38 years, and he probably had his spot, because you know how a lot of these homeless folks, they have their spot, He probably had his spot. And he'd go there every day for 38 years, and he never got to the water. Man, how hopeless would that be? How could you keep getting up every day for 38 years and doing that? Some people would call that insanity. They get up every day and do the same thing and not get to the pond, Or maybe he was the most hopeful person that ever lived, and it's like, one of these days, I'm going to get there. I couldn't be that guy, okay? But maybe he was. One of these days, I'm going to get there. But I'll tell you what, Jesus came along, and Jesus healed him. Because Jesus was his only hope. I talked to a neighbor of mine, an African-American man, and he said to me, I'm just an old black man. I've never had anything but Jesus. And so I just had to hang on to Jesus. And I'm thinking, wow, what a blessing that is. And then I think to myself, I don't know that I want that blessing. Because, I like having my bank account, I like having my car, I like having a family I can rely on. But if you don't have a bank account, and you don't have a car, and you don't have a home, who do you call? You call on Jesus. And I guarantee you most of us would not want to be in that situation, but that is what drives some people to total dependence upon God, because they've got nobody else. And that's one of the reasons why our country is in the state that it's in, because we trusted our bank accounts, our jobs, our families, our homes. We trusted all kinds of things, and it's only when God peels some of that stuff away that we finally got to trust and rely on Him. And I'm probably not talking to those kind of people, because y'all are here, but there are people like that in our world, and you know it, because you know some of them. You work with some of them. You go to school with some of them, don't you? They trust in anything and everything but God. Yeah. And when finally you got nothing, then you get to trust in God. And as I say, how cool is that? They start making fun of me because I say that. How cool is that? They're making fun of me because I say that. I'm making fun of me because I say that. And it was a Sabbath. So the Jews therefore said to the guy that was cured, it's a Sabbath. It's not lawful for you to cure your bed. It was also not lawful to heal people on the Sabbath because that was considered work. Now, if somebody was mortally injured, well, then you could bind up their wounds, save their life or whatever. But if you've been sick for 38 years, you can go to the doctor on Monday. You do not have to go to the doctor on the Sabbath, okay? But they didn't get on Jesus for that. They got on the guy for carrying his bed because you're working on the Sabbath. Now, here's a guy, and they probably may never have gone down to this pool because they didn't need to be healed. So they might not have known that he's been down there for 38 years. All they do is they see him walking, And they're like, it's not lawful for you to carry your bed. But he just got healed. And he's carrying his bed. And he answered, he said, he who made me well said to take up your bed and walk. Okay, so, and maybe, I don't know, but it may be that Jesus knew that if this guy was walking with his bed, that somebody's going to say, you're not supposed to be carrying your bed. And then all of a sudden you have this exchange in which Jesus is going to be exalted. So sometimes you may do something and somebody may say, why are you doing that? And you have an opportunity to talk about God. Or you could say, I don't know. I don't know. The guy told me just take up your bed and walk. And he didn't know who it was. They said, well, who is that man who said that to you? But he didn't know who it was because Jesus snuck off in the crowd. Can you imagine this? Somebody walks up and says, take up your bed and walk, and you do it. You don't even know who he is. And he doesn't even hang around long enough to give you a business card and say, I'm Jesus, pass out some of these cards to people and I can, heal them too. Who wouldn't do that in America, Anyway, I'm just rattling on. Afterward, Jesus found him in the temple and said to him, see that you have been made well. Sin no more, lest the worst thing come upon you. Now, how powerful is that? Jesus shows up out of the blue, makes this guy whole, sees him in the temple, and says, you got healed. But don't sin, lest something worse. Wow. You see, grace demands a response. It was in the pool of Bethesda, the house of mercy, the house of grace, the house of kindness, that Jesus met this guy and had grace, mercy, kindness upon him, and he was healed. But grace demands a response. We had a guy in one of the churches that I pastored one time, and he got into a difficult financial situation. And so I was talking with him about that, and we decided that we would help him out. And so I wrote letters to all the people he owed money to and said, he owes you $500, and we do accept $250 from the church to clear that bill. And so wrote letters, paid up a bunch of bills, paid up his utilities, everything, got him current on everything so that he could live within the amount of money that he had coming in. 2 years later, he's back in the same situation. And we did it again, same thing. Got him current, paid off his bills, stuff, whatever, so he could live within his income. 2 years later, right back in the same place, and he comes to me and says, can you help me? And I said, no. Because, by then I've learned that 2 more years we'd be doing the same thing. And there's something that he needed to learn here. Because we graced him, we gifted him, and there's a response that he needed to make out of this, like figuring out how to make his finances work in response to what we had given him, but he didn't. And he right back in the exact same situation that he was in before. Grace demands a response. Now, grace is a word that is kind of scary to a lot of us because of the backgrounds that we've been in. But this is, I don't know if it's my favorite scripture but about grace, but sure one of them. I might have 100 of them. For the grace of God that brings salvation to all men has appeared, teaching us. So grace is supposed to teach us things. A lot of people think that grace teaches us that we don't need to do anything for God, that we got the grace, we're off the hook, hallelujah, now I can just go back and do whatever I want to do. That's not what grace is supposed to teach us. Now that could be what some people learn, but that's not what we're supposed to learn from grace. And grace teaches us that we are supposed to deny ungodliness. Ungodliness is stuff that is not like God. Okay? So we're supposed to deny that which is not like God, and worldly lust, lust of the flesh, lust of the eyes, pride of life, that stuff. We're supposed to deny all that, that we should live soberly, which doesn't just mean, sobriety in the sense of alcohol, but it means seriously, and righteously, and godly in this present age. That's what grace is supposed to teach us. Don't be afraid of grace if it teaches you that. That's what Paul said grace is supposed to do. It's supposed to teach us those things. And looking for, it also teaches us that we're looking for the blessed hope and glorious appearing of our great God and Savior, Jesus Christ. So grace teaches us that we look for the second coming, who gave himself for us that he might redeem us from every lawless deed and purify for himself his own very special people who are zealous for good works. That's what grace is supposed to do. Grace is supposed to teach us that. And I realize that for a lot of people, grace is not taught them that. But the man departed and told the Jews that it was Jesus who made him whole. Now that's interesting, because it doesn't say that they said, well, when you find out who this is, you come back and tell us. It doesn't say that. But that's what he did. Because he found out that it was Jesus that made him whole, and he went back and he told the Jews that it was Jesus. This man named Jesus. He is the one who told me to take up my bed and walk. And that was his testimony. That was his witness, as the word is used in the evangelical community. That was his story. That's the word that I like to use, because we all have a story. And when Jesus met this man, it changed his story, didn't it? His story was, every day I go and I sit by the pool waiting for it to stir, and I can't get in there, and then I go home. But all of a sudden his story changed. It's a new chapter, because Jesus came. So how important is your story? This is in the book of Revelation, chapter 12. We're talking about how they overcame the devil. Okay, it makes war and all that stuff, and they overcame the devil by the blood of the Lamb. And for sure, the blood of the Lamb, Jesus' sacrifice, enables us to overcome the devil, right? But look what it says. And by the word of their. And it's right there. It's their testimony. So wait a second. Does the Bible really say that you overcome the devil, the evil one, by the blood of Jesus and by your story? I think that's what it says. Even though we may not want it to say that, aren't there parts of the Bible that you have to want it to say what it says? Or am I the only person in this room that has ever had that experience? Okay, I get it. I'm the only one. Okay. All right. By the word of their testimony, your story is powerful because it is God who is writing your story. And he can use your story to help somebody else. I know that's true. And they didn't love their lives to death. Most of us love our lives. And I love the statement that Paul made, and I think it's in the book of Acts where it's recorded, where he's talking to people. And he says, and neither do I count my own life dear to me. Most of us count our own life pretty dear to us. But Paul didn't. Because he was willing to give up his life for what God had called him to do. Bill Wright of Campus Crusade said that only 2% of Christians ever share their faith. So, if you've never shared your faith with anybody, then you're in that 98%, which is where most people are. 2% of the people, I don't know where he got these statistics, but this is what he said. There's only 2% of people actually share their faith. And the big reason for that, I think, is the next slide. No? Where is it? Maybe it's not. Oh, there it is. Oh, it's up at the top, the fear factor. Okay, there you go. Yeah, the fear factor. Because people are scared. Because they're afraid. Somebody's going to get upset, somebody's going to be mad, somebody's not going to be my friend anymore, or blah, 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 whatever. And we've all had people, well, probably not all of us, but most of us have had people. Some of them have knocked on our doors and stuff like that. They've been like pretty obnoxious in the way that they're trying to tell people about what Jesus has done for them. I was having coffee with a friend of mine in Columbia one day. He says, oh, I got to go say hi to my grandson. And he jumps up from the table, and this is a guy about like my age. Like, okay, this is going to be good. And he comes back, and he says, yeah, I led the guy to Christ that led him to Christ. So he's my grandson. How cool is that? But most people don't do it because we got a lot of reasons. And then when you're part of an organization that tells you not to do that, because the gospel is so complicated that you won't get it right, that's really interesting. But most people in all churches don't actually share their faith. So, and part of the reason for that is because people don't know how, because people have the fear factor and they're afraid, and a lot of people like that. But if you're like that guy, and you've been there for 38 years, and all of a sudden you are made well, it's like, how can you not tell that story? How can you go home and then sit down in front of your television set and just live the rest of your life instead of at the pond, or at the pool, you're in front of the television set? How can you live the rest of your life doing that and not telling people what Jesus did for them? So these are why people join churches. 0.5% of mass evangelism, 1.5% of special needs. I thought we would have maybe a program with a person who does sign language for deaf folks, and so we'd have a group of people. There are churches like that, and they have a lot of folks who can't hear, who are in, I'll send you the power. A lot of people who can't hear, and so they have a deaf interpreter for them. So that's like a special needs thing. Pastoral visitation. So I could go out and beat the bushes and walk the neighborhood and pray with people and stuff, all of which I have done in the past in my neighborhood with another pastor. Okay, so we were doing this. We prayer walk for, I don't know, a year and a half or 2 years, about every Wednesday around noontime. And then down on the corner by the, what they call a business loop, to this business loop 70, somebody put in a tarot card fortune teller reader thing. And so we happened to be walking down that way. And he says, I'm going to pray against that. And I said to him, I'm not going to pray against it. I'm going to curse it in the name of Jesus. And I did. I cursed it in the name of God, and 2 weeks later the thing was gone. Okay? But in all my pastoral visitation and all the prayer walks and all the people we prayed for who were working on cars and everything else, our church was just broken. People who just walk in, they drive by, they see your sign or see there's a crowd there or something, you'll get 2.5%. Programs offered by your church, like you have a recovery program, or you're doing a special Bible study or a special kind of a thing, you'll get 2.5% for that. Christian education programs. Well, the 2.5, that would also be like youth programs and stuff like that. Christian education, minister or staff, I call that the personality cult. People who attend the church because they really like the pastor, and when the pastor leaves, all of a sudden they're unhappy with the church or with the new pastor or whatever. But you get 5% of people that do that. But then look at this. 82.5% come because a friend or relative invites them. A personal invite. That's why they come. So, I mean, we can say, well, we don't have enough money to be on TV, or we don't have enough money to do a mass mailing, or we don't have enough of this, enough of that, or whatever. And the biggest thing is for people actually just share their faith with folks and talk about what God did for them. And I realize that one of the deals about that is a lot of us haven't had God do too much for us lately, and so we don't have any like current stories. I get that. But this is what a testimony is from the dictionary. Something that someone says, especially in a court of law, formally promising to tell the truth or proof if the evidence of something exists or is true. Ever been called? Who's been called to be a witness in a court case? Okay, a handful of us have been. They tried to swear me in and I affirmed. And then they affirmed me in. So anyway. But I was a witness in an automobile accident, you know? And they just asked me what I saw. And I said, well, I'm driving down the right-hand lane of this 4-lane street. It's got a center left turn lane over here, you know? And it's got the center lane and, you know, like that. And I'm over here and his car's in front of me. The next thing I know, this car makes a left turn from the right-hand lane across in front of the center lane, and this guy nails him, you know, broadside. And so I was there and I testified. I gave a testimony. I was a witness to what happened. Now they could have asked me, well, what was that man's state, you know, when he did that? Was he drunk or something? I said, well, you got to talk to the police about that, because I don't know. All I know is what I saw. And this is what I saw. I saw the guy make a left turn. He was right in front of me and he turned left in front of me. That's what I saw. I don't have to speak about anything that I didn't see. See, a lot of people think when you're giving a testimony, somebody's going to ask you some question about the pre-existence of Jesus, or what this verse means in Isaiah something or whatever. And I don't know the answer to that, so I can't say anything. Your testimony is what Jesus has done for you. That is your testimony. It's not what Jesus has done for somebody else. It's not even about who Jesus is if he's driving his car and he's making a left turn. It's about what he's done for you. And so it's like what your life was like beforehand, man. Every day I'd go up there and I'd sit by the pool and I'm waiting for the waters to move. And I've been doing this every day for 38 years, and I was so discouraged and I didn't have anybody to help me and blah, 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 blah. And then this guy walked up to me and I didn't even know who he was. And he asked me, do you want to be made well? And I'm like hemming and hawing about it and all this kind of stuff. And he didn't put up with that. He just said, get up and walk and take your bed and get out of here. And I did it because I felt that my body straightened. And now I got my life back. Now I'm not just surviving, I'm thriving. That's your testimony. That's your story. What your life was like before, how he came into your life, and how he changed your life. See, nobody can argue with that because he changed your life. This is my experience. This is what I saw. I am a witness to this because this is what I saw. I don't know about all this other stuff. Talk to somebody else about that, get another witness about that, but this is what I saw. This is my story. So what about you? Well, just what do you mean, what about you? I thought that would get a snicker from somebody. But okay, I know. I need to be made well. Amen. Amen to that. Lord, where are you? For 38 years with this guy. Okay, so do you want to be made well? I already said, and forgive me for saying it, but it's true. We all need to be made well. So, some of us are just a little closer to the pool than other people because we have more resources and maybe we're not as sick as other people. Okay, but we all need to. Every one of us. If we don't, we've already arrived and we ain't arrived yet because we're still human. If you don't believe that, just pinch yourself. Okay, I'll ask you. So we're still human. So do you want to be made well? Now, when you ask that question, you get usually a different response from the females because they just kind of, are more intuitive and stuff and say, yeah, man, my husband really needs to be made well. No, but they do have a sense that kind of, yeah, I get that. That there's more healing. Not just about their husband, but there is more. But you ask the guys, do you need to be made well? And you get a whole different response. Because, guys are guys, And it's like, we're supposed to be men. We ain't supposed to cry, stuff like that. We're supposed to be men. We're supposed to lead the charge into battle and, slay the dragons and all that stuff. That's what we're supposed to do because we're guys. So do you need to be made well? Nope. I'm all right. Everybody around you, your wife, your kids, everybody around you, no, you ain't all right. I'm all right. I don't really need it. Because we have this thing called male pride. And I appreciate male pride because I have my share of it and probably some of your share of it too, okay? So, I get that. But do you want to be made well? That's the question. Or do you want to stay in your pride? Okay? Did I just say that? I just did. And then I heard a guy say the other day, because he was talking about how hard it is for men to admit that they need help. And so he was speaking to a bunch of guys, because we were in this men's ministry group, and he said, so just take out a piece of paper and write down your 10 biggest hurts in life. Just write down your 10 biggest hurts in life, the guy says, and I guarantee you, by the time you get to number 8, you'll be crying. And yet, you don't need to be made well. No, we've got hurts that need to be healed. We all do. Talking with somebody at breakfast this morning about the baggage that some of us have from our past religious experience. Whatever that may be, and yeah, so there's baggage that we have. So you need to be made well. Do you want to see others be made well? Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father versus the God of all comfort, who comforts us in all our tribulation, that we may be able to comfort those who are in any trouble, with the comfort with which we ourselves are comforted by God. See, it's really interesting that Jesus came up and healed this guy. And then he starts telling people that Jesus healed him. And so because Jesus did this to this guy, then it's like it spreads out to other people because he's telling the story. Jesus is over here, and he's doing what he's doing with people. But all of a sudden you have this guy whose satellite's out. And then he shares what Jesus did with him. Because the comfort that we have, we got from God. And then he comforts other people with that. And that's part of the thing about your story. And it's important that you can tell your story because other people can't get hope from your story. And you say, well, nobody can hope from my story. Well, God write your story, and he knows that there are people who can hope from your story. But, if you don't believe that, then you're never going to see yourself telling the story to anybody, are you? It doesn't really depend on you, does it? It doesn't depend on the guy. The guy was there. He'd still been there. Except Jesus came around. And so it depends on God and what God is doing in us, not what we're doing. How long have you been waiting? A lifetime? 38 years is a lifetime. My son is, 37 years old? Pretty much a lifetime to be waiting for your miracle, your deliverance. It doesn't depend on you. It's Jesus, your only hope. So why during the feast? All this stuff happened during the feast. Well, that says that these, and we read this, these small healing pools of Asclepius, however you say that. The cult of Asclepius combined veneration of the god Asclepius with the healing arts. Asclepius, the Roman god of medicine. When you read the early history of all this stuff, and I have read this in medical books because I've got friends who are doctors, and I said, can I borrow your medical history books? And I just want to read up on medical history. And you know, there were temples where people would go to be healed. And they would go and they do all the whatever they do to get ready for all that stuff. And they would sit there and they would wait for the serpent to come out. And the serpent would heal. Now, a lot of people think that the staff thing there, and that's what the medical thing, right, with the stick on it. People think, well, that's about like Moses. And, you know, Moses, and he put the serpent on the staff and raised it up, and then people were healed after God sent the plague of serpents and all that stuff. That's really not where this came from. This came from ancient paganism stuff, you know, when the serpent was the god healer. Justin Martin, we quoted him yesterday. You gotta be careful when you quote him like I said. He said, and when the devil brings forth Asclepius as the raiser of the dead and the healer of diseases, may I not say that in this matter likewise he has imitated prophecies about Christ. So what we have is this pagan shrine where there were these healing pools. And I think it was like an artesian well. I don't think an angel from God went down to a pagan shrine and healed people. But I think it was like Old Faithful kind of a thing, except not like quite as faithful as Old Faithful, because they would have been able to time that, you know, and not as big a deal. But there was some kind of bubbling or something that happened when water was released that was warm, and whoever got in there first was healed. But it was so common in the first century that there was a shrine in the shadow of the temple for this pagan god of healing. So why would Jesus perform a form of healing and go to this pagan shrine to do it during the Feast of Tabernacles? Because unlike so many other healings of Jesus, there's no prayer, there's no laying on of hands, there's no nothing, except Jesus just said, take up your bed and walk. And commanded him, ordered him to do that. And I think it's because one little word was done. This is the mighty fortress is our God, Martin Luther. Although this world with devils filled, I think this is the third verse, should threaten to undo us, we will not fear, for God has willed his truth to triumph through us. The prince of darkness grim, we tremble not for him. His rage we can endure, for lo, his doom is sure. One little word will fetch. One word from Jesus, and it's over for Satan and his kingdom. One little word shall fell him. So I think Jesus went in to the devil's territory during the feast to perform a healing. Because that's what the feast is about. The time in the future when the devil is going to be bound, and all the people that he has affected and all that stuff, they're all going to be set free. And people are going to be healed. That's what the feast pictures, and I think Jesus went in there to do that. And I think the commentators, because by the time the 1611 people wrote the Bible, they didn't care about the feast. They didn't know what it meant. And you sure don't want to say that this is a pagan thing, and why would Jesus go into a pagan thing to do this? And so they wrote this angel tradition thing to try to make sense out of why Jesus would walk into the devil's territory and do a miracle. without the water. Just do it, because he's Jesus, and he can't. I think I just said that. I believe that God wants to heal people here in Williamsburg. How long have you been waiting? Talks about the people who came with the blind, the lame, the paralyzed. So I believe that God wants to do some special stuff for people here. And so I would encourage you, because we have some people here who actually have some degree of training and gifting from God to do healing prayer for people. Roy and Margaret Travis, and they're awesome. So if you want to do it, after the service today or someday, or if you want to do it in private with them, whatever you're comfortable with. But don't be too proud. Don't be too proud. Let go of the stuff. Okay? You need to let go of something. Just let Jesus do it. Put it at his feet. And walk away, just like this guy. And be done with it. And have a testimony. Because you can tell people that, I didn't really think I needed much, but, okay, so I did. I got prayed for. And man, I didn't know how much good it would do me for them to pray for me and all the stuff that God removed from me. I just had no idea. And there's a testimony in that. Somewhere there's a testimony in that, isn't there? There's your story. And you go back and you share that with people, and there might be somebody else who might say, well, I don't know that I need anything good, but maybe you're onto something. Maybe. Heavenly Father, thank you for your goodness in us. Thank you that you love us, and that you want each of us to be who you created us to be whole. And we know the devil wants to keep us trapped in whatever form of bondage it is for each one of us that he would try to keep us in. So Lord, we pray that there's a freedom that comes, whether it's physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. So whatever it is for any of us here today, I want to just pray that we look to you and that you set us free. Thank you for your goodness, for your mercy, for your love.